biomechanics. To me, that perfectly describes cerebral palsy. Just because you contract the muscle does not get any kind of function whatsoever. I just, I can't see it. And that's how I started actually looking at, one of the things I presented at Oxford is that the myosin actin within the cellular rotate, they don't slide. When I'm looking at more of the system mechanics, because just because you have a respiratory system, a circulatory system, and all of this, there's something that talks to all of these things. So when I work on Jill's head or your shoulder, back, and this kind of thing, that's a specific body part, but even working with the whole body, I'm working with your system. And how it all organizes. I don't for a moment think that the brain is more powerful than the body, or, and all of that kind of thing. And I don't think there's a really good definition of that. But when you work, let's say, with a baby in the NICU and stuff, and you do certain protocols, you see respiratory changes, circulatory changes. There's a system response. It's just not pieces and parts. So a lot of books too that I read, it's sort of like they're describing the body like it's a car in a garage. Well, over here we have the heart, and over here we have the lung, but it is hard to write about a living organism and in words, and that's why I'm a table person. I'd much rather go scramble around. So the vestibular to me is the way the body moves within the system and with its environment. So it's the twofold, because if a child, let's say we'll pick on autism, Gesundheit, doesn't have that Gesundheit sense of where they are in space, then their reaction to their environment as well as to how their body functions are like three entities instead of just going within this. So to me, a vestibular system, again, is just how your entire being reacts within itself and within that environment. Like it's sort of like encapsulated. I think a lot of people look at vestibular more as that balance kind of sequence or that kind of thing. But again, if let's say I'm at McDonald's and that's just sensory overload, however you want to look at it, you're not even in tune with that inner system to even know where you are in space and where your balance is. So one of the things we all know, we're in this clubhouse, we're in birth period, we're in Colorado, North America. We don't think that way 24/7. But when you see a child, to me, stimming or flapping, it's like a phone with a GPS system trying to ping. It's just, where am I? And it's trying to get that neurofeedback. But it's easy for us to say, tap them, calm down, you know what I mean? You're in the classroom or wherever you're at, versus actually working on that entire integration. So again, that is just more the way that I look at the human body. And then so to me, that's why it's really important whether I change is a word, influence an awareness or a movement within, let's say, your foot. It's going to not only infect your body, but how you are in the environment. So that's why to get off the table and walk around, you're going, ooh, some people might be, it's an inner, I notice my shoulder is longer or looser, my hand's doing this. But with another person, it's like I walk differently, how they respond to the ground, how they respond to their environment, how they navigate around a couch. And then just the more that's synchronized, that's a really healthy vestibular system. But I think most of us only see that topically with maybe more high-end performers. They know, and because they have to perform in the hot and the cold and whatever. They've learned how to operate in environmental stresses, not only of where they sleep to environment, cold, hot, whatever, as well as different, from grass to clay to whatever that they've played on. So they're adaptable, or we see it as being more successful. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and so with baby, again, a baby's only clue to where they go in life is, again, how they respond to stimuli. Now, again, this response to stimuli can be an internal processing. However, I don't believe that they have that kind of facilities in them just yet to say, like, I get it that they say, oh, by 2 months they recognize, or maybe earlier, but by 2 months for sure, they recognize the mother and the father kind of thing, but at 2 months, you still can pick up a child and take it, you know what I mean? And they're gonna go to somebody else, or they're not going to, I think they know pretty much, it's like, oh, when that lady comes around, I get the good stuff, you know? And, you know, the milk is usually warm, that kind of thing, that their nappies are changed and all of that. You can tell it's just in England, sorry. All these things that happen in their lives, but at the same time, they're adaptable little beings. They're just there to respond to stimuli. So if grandma takes them for the day, as long as those kind of environmental things are offered to the child, then they don't stress in that thing, so they can still be able to do what they're doing. But at that young age, you can start seeing where kids are more high-strung, and only the mother can hold them, and only the, you know, and we look at that as a loving bond, and I look at that like, ooh, we're starting to have an issue, and, you know, and, even like with this work, you'd be just amazed how fast colic can be improved in one session.
Yeah.
What, by rotating through the ribs or
Everything.
Anywhere. Again, the baby is a purest form of a system. But when you touch a baby, and you're really going to see this with the 1-month-olds today and stuff, like the babies, I'm touching their system. With you, it might be an arm, it might be a leg. With the babies, they immediately will start to just, like little amoebas, they'll just suck this stuff in. And it's really cool to watch, you know. I sort of call it like, you know, I'm not good at this. I just look at babies like little Rubik's Cubes. I just know how to go. But, and that's where I really started looking at human movement and development. You have to go back to when we were pure systems before we decided, do we have an identity? Are we the oldest brother, the youngest brother? All these kind of things that people write about. It's how that system formed to begin with to even adapt into those kind of environments. I find fascinating, but that's a whole nother subject. They really, and just this little rotation, or their ability, the rotation is the only way they can respond to stimulus outside their system. That's why the rotation is so important, because otherwise they become too internal. And that's where the detriment is to their nervous system, in a sense. And even though someone with CP wants to do things, the conversation of the internal self supersedes the external environment that they can, especially when a child ends up being nonverbal. They can't, you know, I mentioned it before, you know, I feel bad for like the 3-year-olds, especially when they're therapized, you know what I mean? They have so many therapies, they don't get to choose their outfits, they don't get to choose where they're going. It's like, hi, here's Michelle, you know, sorry we're late, boom, they're on the table. And they're like looking up at me like, who the heck are you? And, you know, there's no, I don't know, for lack of a better word, sorry, people tease me about it. There's no foreplay, there's no setup, there's no of conversation as to how their day's going to be. And it was so neat watching Magda with Nella. She offered this child 2 pairs of pants, and she got to choose at 8 months old. And I'm like, damn, I never would have done that with my child. Right? I mean, in a sense, more mature for her age. Now, again, is it okay? I mean, should she be allowed to be a baby more? She was allowed to be just, you know, but she was picked up by all of us. She would have gone to anything. She was adorable. You know, nobody was, but yet the other baby, on the other hand, you know, it all depends. If certain people pick up the stress level, it's amazing how that response starts to change. And, you know, is it that the child's awkward about going to a party and introducing themselves and making friends? Does that awkwardness come from this stage of life, you know?
I have a question.
1 second, because Paulette had it first, sorry.
Sorry.
Unless I answer.
I was thinking about the way I would work with this, or the way I work. I see kids, clients, different times, sometimes twice a week or whatever, sometimes once a month, sometimes. But is there any benefit to, like, I was just wondering about the frequency of doing these lessons. You know, if you're working on somebody, is there any benefit to taking a break, or can you just do it as much as you want?
It all depends on the person you're working with. If you're dealing with the babies, honestly, 1 or 2 lessons, unless you know that they've been like,
Yeah,
2 weeks NICU time plus or whatever, then you need to go in and really, the problem with too much time in the NICU, again, saving the baby's life is more important, and again, looking at the prematurity, the actual trauma of it. But this rotation, I don't know if Ruth would be able to put a better hand on it, but because I showed her the myosin akin last night, but any organ that goes into failure has to be restarted by a third party. So right now, if your heart stopped, you better hope one of us knows something.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you know what I mean? There's no grabbing your heart and trying to massage it. I believe that the same with rotation. So when the actual system failure happens, that rotation, it needs to be restarted by a third party. And that's why the sooner you get at it, the
Right.
more beneficial.
Yes.
So your question is, again, if we're talking with the baby, if I could see every baby as soon as they get home, wahoo, I just think you just see like kids in Peoria just have a different life. The kids that I've worked with, even just typical babies that come to my class once a week, by 10 months old, they're like super babies. Their vestibular systems, oh my gosh, so yeah, I can just float them in the air, I can float them in my hands, I call it floating babies. I have videos on this, and they just sit there and just float in my hands, float them upside down, turn them around.
do you mean by class, like you have?
Every Thursday morning back home, I have class from 8 to 10, just like this, just impromptu that I do.
For parents?
Whoever,
Oh, and then babies just show up?
whatever, parents show up with their kids. It could, it ends up looking like story time sometimes, and sometimes it's just one parent, myself, or someone that just
Oh.
wants to. But I charge $15 for 2 hours, and just.
Wow.
But I like this because it helps me teach better, learn better,
Sure,
explain
yeah.
better, and try new ideas out that I'm playing with. So, and then when the child gets older, I prefer I get you for a whole week. That way, any kind of new situations, like I said, if anyone's had severe trauma, I literally have to go in and do rotation in each finger or each metatarsal. I mean, I've got to get at the system.
You mean like a whole week, that would be like the,
5 days, 2 days, times a day. So they get 10
Oh,
lessons in
10
1 week.
lessons.
That's how I prefer to work if the child needs to come in to see me. That's, the babies, a couple of times, but as they get older, and that doesn't take much time, that's what I prefer.
right.
So if I have a person once a week, then you're sort of getting maintenance. And that's why I don't take notes. So you asked me about notes?
I
or-
asked about charting.
Charting. First of all, I have everything on videos, but there are also two, you're not the same person as you were yesterday, much less
It
last
would be
week.
hard to chart. I would
So I don't do that because what if you didn't sleep well last night? What if you were in a car accident by the time of last time? Or what if you stubbed your toe? So I have to be open for those conversations. There are people that I see on a regular basis, but I'll say, is it okay if I do what I want to do, or do I need to address something? And then they'll let me know that if I pinched my nerve or whatever, did something lifted, and then I have to address that. But if not, I might just be playing with them. So, and I have a couple adults that are like that, but, sorry, Anita?
It's okay. You said yesterday you don't like to interrupt a baby's nervous system. And now again, rotation is the only way the baby responds outside of their system. Are you meaning the nervous system?
Well, yeah, but the whole, like I said, it's the whole body. Like we have a nervous system, we have a circulatory system, we have an endocrine system, we have all these different systems. I
Okay.
believe that the system itself, there's a system mechanics that I refer to it as, but there's an embodiment in our bodies that coordinates all that, sort of like the conductor. And people think that's the brain, but at the baby's point, the brain doesn't know that this is a kitchen, much less that this, that I'm, Michelle Turner. The body, in a baby's form, they're still reacting to me and their bodies as a one unit, and then it starts to develop. Even when someone says like a baby's mastered walking, let's say by 2, to me, master only means that you can teach it. And there's no way a 2-year-old can teach you how to walk. They're still experimenting. They haven't milestoned yet. They haven't finished growing. They haven't finished, so
But
that's.
What do you mean try, you don't interrupt their nervous system, because the vestibular system is part of that, and when you rotate, you work with the vestibular system.
Yeah, but if they present themselves in a certain way, I'm enhancing it, but I'm not going to try to fix them. I'm not trying to
change.
Right, like when Paulette went on the table, ideally laying on the table, you should have your feet underneath the pelvis. Well, if I did that to her, she's now more concerned on her balance, let's say, or where she is in space. So I've interrupted where her system is in compared to her environment. So now that she's trying to figure out the two, she's not paying attention to what I have to offer. So basically I just say, lie on your side, what I get, I get. If someone's really confused with that, like if they've had a brain injury, then I say, however you feel comfortable in bed, please lie down that way.
Okay, I understand.
Because they can't understand even left and right.
You're more facilitating and enhancing.
Mm-hmm.
And if I remember right, I think she said that after she was interrupted, so she was like, I don't want to stop in the middle of, like you were kind of doing stuff, and then when to teach, you have to stop and typically.
Right, yeah, true. That's another way of looking at it. Let's say I'm in the middle of this doing the baby. I'm not going to talk to the baby and say, this is what I'm doing, kind of thing, because, So yeah, I don't, because when I'm working on them, then it's their lesson. Even though I'm here to teach you guys.
And also, if you're in the middle of doing some kind of movement that they like, to pull it away is...
Yeah, even when I'm working with an adult, ideally, let's say if I'm here, I don't take my hands away unless I have to say, I'm now about to go to your feet, but I'll let you know. But if I'm here, let's say, I'll go here. I maintain my connection.
Yeah.
And then when I'm connected here, then I'll bring the hand over. So I don't have what I feel are ADD hands. And I see that a lot with, Now, if you've got a low-tone kid, you're trying to get into sitting, you might have to be a little bit more creative, but I try and protect their vestibular system at that moment. I think it's important to have different visualizations, especially again, someone, if you get to visit a baby in a NICU environment, or they could still be in the crib sleeping at home and you don't want to disturb them, that you can just go at it. Again, the assessment schedule is in the book, but probably Monday or Tuesday you'll get an email from me and I'll just send you the PDF of the score system so you can go over it. I basically look at the score system as anything over a 5, I'd like to give a kid a lesson. I know I try and put in it that 5 and under is a low score. You probably don't have to worry about things. But if you start to chart up, but 5 and under, I find too, is more hospital time. Did you have a natural delivery? Did you have a Pitocin or some kind of epidural and stuff that are going to start to interrupt the way that you're having? But you basically just check off of one off the box. Now, usually NICU stays. If anybody says they've been in the NICU, I know they have to be over 5 easily. It's just. Even 2 days in the NICU, you most likely had a surgical birth trauma, some kind of, all of that kind of thing. But basically, when I'm going down the body, anything that I feel doesn't rotate would give me a 1. Just that simple. But I don't find it in the pelvis. Despite the birth history, just the evaluation, let's say, on Paul, I would have ticked off every part on him yesterday. I didn't find one part on him that I would have said, oh, the shoulder's okay, the head's okay. But to me, the flat head would have flagged everything. The flat head, I don't know how, and again, that might be something I'm going to have to look at, is doing another paper. But
It's a bad head. Not only a flat head, but it was a bad head.
the reason, okay, I don't like to say that about babies, but what happens with about a flat head where it gets oblique, so it kind of gives, so he was widened more here. So normally if you look at someone, this is where my art background, if we look at everybody, right, look at what you can see just straight on with the human body. And one of the things you can see are people's ears. First of all, a baby's head is round. Our heads, believe it or not, are a 90-degree angle. That was one of the wildest things. If you just do like this, you should fit into here. Now, unless you're Asian or Eskimo kind of thing where you have those. But you're actually a 90-degree angle. That's how much you have in your face to get it. Now, proportions too, if we look at the human body, our hands here, but also our hands is to the ear. So see my hand, nose to ear. And then, so these are our proportions. So if you're an artist, this is what you start looking for if you're doing a self-portrait with someone. So I can quickly look at someone's scale. So if I go here, mouth to ear is ear eye to eye width for the most part. Do you see that? So here, see mouth to brow is eye to eye. Those are just artist tricks, Ruth. It's not amazing. But these things will show up. Now the baby's heads will be more round. This is one of the things that happens when we start to mature, is not only that the chin drops and all that sort of stuff, but we become more three-dimensional in our space. So if you looked at him, first of all, the way that the head shape is changing had a little bit of a bulge before the ear, giving him more of the roundish shape here. So you didn't see the ears quite correct. And what it is that round shape, unlike this little guy, you know, he might be a dummy, but this is what a baby should look like. So he came in about here proportionally because of the way the head was shaped. So just adding on that, just imagine what it's going to be like to roll around and what he's going to get to his vestibular system, the changes, versus what should be, what his brain was organized to do. That's where my art background comes in. We're meant to be the way we are. It doesn't matter if we're black, white, purple. I mean, that just doesn't faze me. We have certain proportions for a reason. No, I get it. If you come from different environments where there's a lot of sun, you're going to be darker skin. All those kind of things come. Again, this is where your system reacts to the environment and you work around that stimuli. But still, we are made of certain proportions for a reason. So when you change that, we're expecting that nervous system to adapt. But if that nervous system doesn't know what to do with the changes, then we have an issue. So that's why people go, well, I'll come to you after my hip surgery. Well, I want to see you before the hip surgery as well as after the hip surgery, because I want to make sure that your system is as flexible and pliable going into the stressful condition as it is coming out of the situation. But a lot of people, the human psyche always thinks of after versus a prepper, you know, like it really is important how to prep to pack. So why would you do it with your body? But anyway, so you're just coming in at any point and it just takes 3 seconds. It really does. I mean, now I would take more because, wow, ooh, I get to play with a baby. But the second, you might want to do a quickie, just because that's the assessment part. Because if you find you're playing with the knee, you're going to be making changes over on the other side, and it's going to throw your assessment a little bit. So that's the only problem when you're sitting there playing with the babies. And you're going to see it today. Like I said, it's really hard for me to not just touch one body part and like go to town. I'm just going to have to go around quickly. And so you're just going to be here and here. This is the big one again. It's just that foot flags and wants to wag back and forth. Not a windshield wiper. Again, that foot is a windshield wiper. It's going to start laying up everything. To assume that the foot's going to be stiff, the leg's going to be stiff because of the windshield wiper, that would be more in a high-tone situation. But in a low-tone situation where the whole system's just presenting as floppy baby or whatever you want to call it, you still can have that windshield wiper kind of effect without having, quote, the stiff leg. And believe it or not, I'd say a lot of people have a problem with the low tone kiddos giving them therapy versus a high tone for that reason, that it's just harder to, quote, know where the response is.
It is, because you don't know if it's...
But it's funny because my son's hypotonic, that's what I like. So it's just what I learned off of.
What is hypotone mean?
Low tone, very low
That's
tone.
low tone, okay.
My son's like the Michelin marshmallow man. You know, like that's...
Can just bend anyway.
He can bend anyway, but he doesn't know he can't do something, so he can high round kick to the head. He's a black belt, but they tested him based off of his diagnoses. So not to say that they gave him special testing, but they took it into consideration because we do the Chuck Norris style. It's about doing your best. So as long as he was up there doing his best, he passed. Or I mean, but he'll never fight like Bruce Lee. Or I wouldn't have him in competition fighting because they just kill him.
But I wouldn't want to.
Right.
Is low tone just more common with like the thinner children?
No.
No.
Opposite,
It's the
opposite, yeah.
But you
Okay.
can keep.
Oh, well, yeah, I guess so. It's how they move, right?
Low-tone kiddos, they tend to look like, little potatoes or that kind of
Floppy,
stuff, and,
floppy.
yeah,
Maybe.
yeah,
Heavy.
yeah, very heavy.
But you can.
I can say, because I was a mom,
Yeah.
like, literally picking Graham up was like picking up a bag of dog food.
Yeah.
Because the body just, they're just, it's not helping you at all. I mean, especially when they tantrum. Oh my God, when they're 4.
Has his tone changed a little bit in the past year because he looks different?
A little bit in the past year. I don't know what's happening, but I don't know if it's just the way his skeletal system is taking him or if it is muscles, but I was dead on shocked that he handled England like he never once complained. He walked like you wouldn't believe, and he was off. And the other day we did meet the teacher night, and boy, he just off to the next classroom. It was hard to keep up with him. I'm like, well, who is this kid?
He seemed more connected, but then I'm thinking, where I saw him was in the pool. So I don't know if that,
Yeah,
I mean, that was most.
but he's lost weight. But I mean, with his height. But I don't know.
There was something much different, much
Yeah.
more coordinated, connected.
But the babies will be, I wouldn't say low tone, but with the babies, and this is what I'll be pointing out with the 1-month-olds and stuff, the babies that we're getting in. Are we getting another one, Corey, you think?
Yeah, I think we're getting another one at 1:30.
Cool.
So we
Now we know where the
might not have
babies
a
are.
lunch.
And how old is that one?
He, so he'll be just 3 months, like just 3 months.
Okay,
But he's got some,
okay.
it's a 13-year-old mama.
Wow.
How old?
13 or 14-year-old mother. And it's a house that I go to. I don't see him, but they're both in foster care. And so there were issues with him and a very misshapen head and
Cool. I don't mean to say cool about the head, but no, I mean,
Excellent specimen.
I'm telling you, I'm a helper. That's all I want to do is help, and to sit there now. It is a foster situation. Please let them know, though, that we'll just blank.
Yes.
We're videotaping it, but anything will be we're cover
Anonymous.
the face or
Okay.
whatever. Oh, everything I do is anonymous.
yes.
Even with all you guys, I'm not going to ever say like, oh, look at Jill was on the table the other day. I don't do that. I'll just so. Underneath the head, sorry, I know I'm talking instead of doing this. What's neat about doing it this way, now you don't have to pick up the baby, but you can sit there and do a spinal assessment just like doing that. You're just underneath the head, you're under the tush, and you're just like little sailboats. Notice I'm not doing same.
Are you sort of doing a little bit of a twist there?
Yeah.
Like one hand goes one way, one hand goes the other? Yeah.
But
Opposite rocks.
right, but that would be a perfect example of how the baby should set up. Now, if you're doing it this way, you can actually do iliac crest, pelvic points, and just do here or do here. You can do it as well as this way, just do a spinal assessment. Here you can just, again, I'm not lifting the head, I'm not doing anything, doing the shoulders, doing the elbows, wrists. Just a real quick assessment.
Are you looking for range or just like
No.
if the baby resists? kind
You
of?
will know if that they're not rotating or not. You really will. You can do this when they're sleeping or whatever. You will have, again, these little infantile spasms. That's why I wanted to cover them. And just let it happen. Let it happen because they're just responding because, again, for lack of a better word, imagine, do you ever see like Blue Man Group or whatever that where they have the stretchy material that you have to get out more, Ruth. But just imagine again, the baby is covered by 14.7 pounds of PSI, gravitational force, right? So again, any move that they make, really watch for this with the 1-month-olds. How they do, and even just these little fingers will do stuff, but they're actually, it's sort of like the whole world is honey, and they're just trying to move with this environment. You saw it with Rachel's arm. The difference between doing this and this. You know what I mean? This is lift-load-based system, and this is a weight transfer. And that's what you should see. Now, baby will suddenly maybe do this, and then they'll come back. What's interesting with looking at that aspect is human beings are the only species that stretch. Every other species believes in contractions. So even though you might see, quote, downward dog, what a dog is doing is they're actually contracting through the abdomen, but they're not actively stretching the arm out. So they'll contract, because when you contract, that's where you get a muscle release. So if you all do that, if you just contract real tight and then let it go, that's where you'll feel the muscle release. So to stretch another, especially when you're trying to stretch another human being out, you're never really going to achieve what you want to achieve, because what happens when you start to rubber band, they snap back. So you get that same kind of mechanism back. But if you actually, so one of the parlor tricks that are used, if someone's just stroked, instead of trying to, like, say, uncurl the hands, you actually get them to go tighter. What it is the brain has a now reference, oh, I can go this tight or I can go this tight. Well, then I can also do a release. So once the comparison's there, then you have more options versus trying to pull the hand out. Unfortunately, though, once that goes into the nervous system, then it's very hard to do either one. But if you get them where the brain is still pliable to that right after a stroke, you usually get pretty successful getting the hand out. So same thing with the baby when you're working with them. So if they suddenly contract, again, that's their more, nature. They're learning how to actually push, sort of what I did with you, going around. They're pushing against that gravitational force, and then they come back in, sort of. But what's important about those infantile spasms is they're also learning where their internal power comes from. So one of these days I have to get one of these suckers, but I have one of those like popper tops when it's a spring and you push it down and you wait until there's so much energy and it goes boing. Think of that more, that's how you work. So like, I'm here, I'm just leaning on the thing, so I'm not going to sit there and beat you up. But if I had to, in 3 seconds, I could do it. Just like my feet can suddenly run, jump, or whatever. We don't have like on-off buttons with our bodies. So we get this stored kinetic energy, and that's where those mechanisms set up as a baby. So a high-tone baby and a low-tone baby, they're not going to set up these mechanisms really nicely in their system. And this will come later when they start going against the breast tissue. I don't know if, not everybody nursed, but for those who nursed, do you remember when the baby used to do that with your breast tissue? It's a really important milestone that they get, because they get to push and play and start feeling not only where they are in space, but their power, in a sense of where they can go in and out, and they're playing with that. If you notice, a baby at that stage is not whacking you at any means. They're incapable of doing those kind of movements. They're just, sort of like little cats do and stuff, that kind